Science Outside the Lab is traditionally a one-week immersion in all things science policy in Washington, D.C. The idea is to get totally immersed in everything Washington, D.C. to sort of see science and engineering from completely different viewpoints than you would normally get in the lab. So how do people think about science and technology in Washington, D.C.? How does scientific discovery help inform government policy? How does government policy help to shape future technologies? How do funding decisions work? What gets funded in science, what doesn't? How are those decisions made? How does regulation happen? How does the EPA think about regulating chemicals, and how do they use science information into making those decisions? So many people sort of think Washington, D.C. is a place where there's no science or engineers. It ends up that over the course of a week, we'll meet with a couple dozen people with a PhD in science and engineering who are actively trying to apply what they know about those fields to make better decisions for our country.
I did Science Outside the Lab both online and in person, and from both of them, I think the most vivid thing was actually the interactions with the other students, finding other people from different universities that had the same kind of passion about learning about policy while also being physical scientists was really exciting, and almost felt like I could really build a network off of that, and doing that in person and online, it was a great experience.
I think the most wonderful thing about Science Outside the Lab is watching fellow participants over the week. Their eyes just get bigger and bigger. You know, you might imagine that at the beginning, being in DC, you're just in awe of everything that's happening there, and then it kind of normalizes. I feel like it's the opposite, that we all get this sense about the breadth of what can happen in policy work and how science and policy interface. And so there's just an amazement that grows over the course of the week as you discover more and more sort of options for how your own work can contribute to science policy, and how science policy relies on such a breadth of expertise.
In my academic work, I study environmental problems. I say that I study the ways that well-intentioned environmental policies can have unintended consequences. So much of the time that I spend thinking about these things is thinking about the problem itself, and it can be a little bit disheartening because I don't feel like the work that I'm doing is making an impact, or so many times I think the policies are considered external to the problems that we're trying to solve, or that's something that's coming into the environment and causing an imposition. But in reality, these are all decisions that we're making, and I think being able to see and understand and learn more about how that process actually worked, how we could take this information that was being generated from scientific research and apply that to the types of problems that I was encountering in my academic work was really interesting for me and really exciting for me.
I think the thing that most of the students sort of really grapple onto, that they're really excited about, is just how passionate and dedicated so many of the people are in Washington, D.C. to try to have the best possible outcomes. And I think that gives hope to a lot of our students to realize, oh, the people that are there, they're really trying to do the right thing. And it ends up that juggling values and science and the future of our country is incredibly, incredibly complicated. And we need those people on the front lines really working hard to try to get the right information, to have the right decision-making processes to make the best decisions.
What is unique about this program is that we aren't just listening to lectures. We aren't just listening to something that we could watch when someone gave a talk on YouTube. This is something that is tailored to the questions that we have to ask, and so it matters to us. If I have a question about how someone's career path led them to where they are now, maybe someone else has a question about what really happens behind closed doors when you're trying to make a policy outcome happen. What are the disappointments? What are the great success stories? Those are the kinds of things that you get from this program that you aren't going to get anywhere else.
I think sometimes as a physical scientist, when I was going through my graduate program, I felt like I was being pinholed into specific types of jobs or jobs in industry, and going through the SOTL program really opened my eyes to ways that I could use my degree outside of a traditional research setting, and that I could be useful in those settings as well. So honestly, it just opened the horizons for different jobs that I could get with my PhD afterwards.
So what do we look for in a good applicant? We tend to get a lot of applications. The best applications are the ones where the person has really stopped taken their breath, to take the time to try to figure out, what do I really want out of this? And the best participants that we have are those people as well. They're the people who come into the program with big questions that they want to dive into and are ready to ask them.
You're going to learn a lot, so if you're there to engage with other people that are interested in policy, it's a great space for a week to do that and to learn a little bit more. And I know so many people that have gone through that haven't really changed their trajectory, and some people that have drastically changed their trajectory of where they went with their degrees. So it's whatever experience you want, you're going to get it out of it.
I think if you're on the fence, you should definitely do it. I think especially if you're interested in the ways that science is actually used and the way that decision makers think about science, I think you can get a lot out of the program. And I think it makes your research better even if you're not interested in pursuing a policy path, because I think oftentimes one of the things that I learned is that the ways in which we do science as scientists isn't always necessarily the ways that policymakers need science to be done to make policy. And I think finding ways as scientists to bridge those gaps can make the research that we do that much more effective for policymakers.